When the opportunity of self-insurance came around, I tried to understand it, and I thought it would be a great alternative because we found that if I can go to the depositions, look at the employee across the table, and really make sure that we have the right attorney representing us, we'd have better control of the outcome.
Welcome to the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. Every week, we're interviewing industry experts, restaurant operators, and brokers to talk about the world of workers' comp self-insurance in California. Hello, and welcome to the Self-Insurance Podcast. My name is Kaya Stanley, and I'm the CEO of CRMBC, which is California's only restaurant workers' comp self-insured group. Today, I'm joined by Selwyn Yosslowitz, who is also one of our board members and has been a member of CRMBC since 2006. He is the founder of Marmalade Cafe that has 7 locations and 450 employees. And he also happens to be serving on the board for the California Restaurant Association for the last 25 years. You're a busy guy. Welcome, Selwyn. I'm so glad for you to join us here today. And we've talked a lot about, the benefits of self-insuring, and you've self-insured your workers' comp for a long time. First, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get into restaurant? And tell us about how Marmalade Cafe came to be the success that it is.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I came to this country in 1981. I happened to join a company called Bob Burns Restaurants, and my mentor was Elizabeth Burns. She was an incredible leader, and she got me involved in the California Restaurant Association. In 1989, I started the business with 2 of her children, and we grew the business. We did it the traditional way, borrowed money, built the restaurants from scratch, and we built them in very relatively affluent communities and very high-profile communities. And we've been around since 1989, and the concept, the restaurants, are more relevant today than they were in 1989 because they are solid neighborhood cafes, very reliable. So we are very much of a customer and an employee-centric culture. And we strongly believe, we've always had this philosophy, take care of the employees, take care of the customers, and the profits will follow.
And it's worked for you. You've had a very successful career in restaurant. And one of the reasons why we decided to do this podcast is because restaurant owners are often in the weeds of their business, and they are focused on, their menu, their labor. And so sometimes other things that are important can get brushed under the rug. So until it becomes a problem. And so the purpose of this podcast is to bring to light different industry leaders, restaurant operators, so we can talk about best practices. We can talk about some of the nuances in running your restaurants. And you are one of the operators that I've been the most impressed with how much you do put the focus on your employees and your customers, and it shows in your workers' comp numbers. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today is why is it that you decided that self-insurance was the strategy for you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I've always viewed workers' comp as a line item and a controllable expense, like any other expense item. And, whenever we firmly believe, and if an employee has a legitimate injury, you take care of them. We'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the employee feels whole and is completely taken care of. What we found in traditional insurance, if there was an issue, a post-term claim, we felt that the adjusters were so overwhelmed with so many cases that paid very little attention to our claim. And with the result, we had massive reserves, and we felt we weren't taken care of properly. When the opportunity of self-insurance came around, I tried to understand it, and I thought it would be a great alternative because we found that if I can go to the depositions, look at the employee across the table, and really make sure that we have the right attorney representing us, we'd have better control of the outcome. And when we joined CRMBC in 2006, we weren't the best performer at the time. And over time, we really put extra emphasis on workers' comp and making sure that at every single manager's meeting, we spoke about workers' comp, we spoke about employee safety, we spoke about the culture of the company, how important it is that make an employee feel that they are very valuable and they belong to a family. And so whenever there was a claim, even with a post-term claim, either myself or someone else, we should always go to every deposition, since I knew many of the employees, and we could guide the lawyer in terms of asking the right questions and not be afraid to press and to find out the truth. And we felt that once we just made the proper discovery, we were able to reduce reserves, which if they were unnecessarily high, and be able to control the outcome.
And this has translated to real dollar savings for your business, because in a traditional insurance company, as you mentioned, typically you don't have that level of access to your adjuster or access to the legal panel. And at some point down the road, your rates end up going up because of claims that you had no ability to impact.
That is correct. And it's amazing because the power of control is amazing with our management team, because I used to get together with them. We discuss the strategy, discuss every aspect of the employee situation, particularly in a post-term situation. So we were fully armed and fully equipped to handle the deposition in the best possible manner. And our management felt empowered, and I felt empowered because the results were always favorable.
And so it's also impacted your business too, besides just having better workers' comp numbers. Having that level of focus and having that level of leadership training has really impacted the culture of your restaurant. Will you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it goes hand in hand with the total culture of the company, because we care so much about employees. Just to give you an example, 30 years ago, we had 401ks with matching funds. We had health insurance. We did everything when I could least afford, the company could least afford it, because employees are so important to us. I said the kind of culture when it comes to workers' comp, the caring, just goes hand in hand with the culture of the company. And we feel that if there's a legitimate claim with employees, they see how we react. We pay them for the first 3 days. We drive them to the urgent care if they've got a cut or anything like that. And we make sure that they're taken care of and they're made to feel whole. So employees really believe in us, and I feel, and the company feels, that they feel part of an extended family. And workers' comp is just one of those areas which we are able to deliver.
So this is a good segue. One of the things that we enjoy as part of CRMBC is there's kind of a coming together of some really great operators where we get to share best practices and talk about different things that like we said earlier is kind of overlooked with some restaurant owners, because they don't look at it until things become an issue. And some people look at traditional insurance as just a commodity. They just pay for it, but they're not looking at the impact of how it's impacting everything in their business. And we know that often when we see a lot of workers' comp claims in a specific operation, there's often a culture problem. And so that's one of the things that we start to target with our loss prevention team, is going in and looking at what's going on culturally in the organization that's resulting in these higher workers' comp claims.
Yeah, we have many long-term employees. And so it's very important that the employees and the management team buy into the importance of workers' comp. I believe the culture of a company is really, really important. And I firmly believe that if employees feel that the management team has really got their back, you'll have less claims in the long run. And particularly the ownership. If the ownership if you don't lead from the top, making workers' comp important, the management team's not going to buy into it. And I believe you will have unnecessary claims. I've seen it, I've witnessed it when an employee has a legitimate claim. I've seen how our management react to it. I've seen the follow through. I've seen us when we contact our adjuster and we make sure that they contact the employee. They check on them on, if not a daily or weekly basis, to find out what kind of progress they're making, and they report back to us. What I love about this group is that if we have more than 1 or 2 claims, we meet with them on a regular basis, like every 2 months, and to discuss the claims of what we're doing about the claims and why a case has been open, and analyze why a case is, when it's in our opinion, it's been open too long and the reserves are too high. So we definitely have way more control over the claims and way more control over the employee's happiness and making sure the employee gets returned to work as soon as possible. And that's really the goal. If there's an injury, get the employee back to work, make them feel whole, and you'll have a happier employee.
And let's talk about return to work for a minute. That's a really important tool that both can help the injured worker. It's a fine line because we don't want them to come back to work before they should, but also if they don't come back to work in the time that their doctor says that they can, that can raise some issues too. Tell us about your philosophy on return to work and what your experience has been with that program.
Yeah, we try to get employees back to work as soon as possible. As you mentioned, we don't want them to come back to work if they've got an injury that's going to prohibit them from doing a job. But if they have modified duty, we will try our hardest to accommodate the modified duty because we don't want anyone sitting around and not feeling part of the team. And that's been our experience. When someone does come back to work, even if we give them clerical responsibilities until they are back to full duties, they're a much happier employee, better than sitting around at home. So we encourage that, and we try to find ways where we can accommodate them and maybe teach them different skills while they have the modified duty.
Have you had any bad experiences with modified duty?
There's not really bad experiences, but there's always the risk, and our management team gets really concerned when someone's on modified duty that they'll have an aggravated work injury while returning to work too soon. So we're very aware of that, and we pay attention to that. And also depending on the employee and the good standing of the employee, their long-term employee, we take everything into account, how we accommodate.
Now, we have a very hot topic here in California that has many restaurant owners really panicking right now, and that is the increased minimum wage. Will you talk to us a little bit about how you guys are dealing with the increased minimum wage, and is it a cause for concern to you?
Whenever there's an increase in minimum wage, particularly with such a large jump from $16 to $20 in a segment of the industry where they have 60 or more fast food restaurants, the alarm bells go off because if there's an independent restaurant, they have to pay $20 an hour to keep up with the competitors. There's someone who's a dishwasher is going to go work for the competitor, and they're going to have a real hard time finding help. In our particular case, we've always, even through COVID, we take care of the employees. We're a table service restaurant, and we have tip sharing. So our employees can make anywhere between $4 to $6, the employees in the kitchen, that is, anywhere between $4 to $6 an hour over and above whatever their wage rate is. So we do that to be competitive, and we really feel that we have to recognize the team, the kitchen, in a way that they have full remuneration. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem in our industry that just only a part of the industry has to be forced to pay the $20 an hour. And if you think it's not going to affect the independents or even the small group of restaurants, table service restaurants, we're wrong. It will. It's going to have a trickle-down effect. And I know there's a lot of discussion right now and a lot of concern that this is going to affect our industry in a very negative way.
Selwyn, before we leave, what are the hottest topics that you think restaurant owners need to be aware of moving forward into the rest of this year?
Well, I think employee costs, labor costs are a huge factor. Employee morale, just keeping the employees engaged in your concept and your culture. That's really going to be very, very more important today than it's ever been, because you don't want to lose good employees because of higher wages being paid from your competitors. I think food costs is always a huge concern in our industry. With inflation, even though the inflation numbers they say are stabilizing and going up, we don't see it so much. It has stabilized a little bit, but we're still we're paying a lot more money than we were pre-COVID. So those are the two big issues, and obviously rents are a big factor in our industry. And we in high-profile locations and pay very large rents, so we have to do the high-volume business to be able to afford to operate in the locations we're at. So I think those are the big factors. And the biggest concern we have here in California is the laws are changing all the time, and it makes it very hard if you employ a lot of people to comply with all the laws all the time. And the biggest concern from a lot of us is the PAGA lawsuits that float around, and we're trying to address it right now.
Thank you so much, Selwyn, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Self-Insurance Podcast. If there are any specific questions you'd like us to cover, shoot us an email at contact@crmbc.com, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us for the Self-Insurance Podcast, brought to you by CRMBC. If there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, or if you have any questions, just email us at info@crmbc.com. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share, and join us again next week for more tips on self-insurance.